Let's go, hey.
Got me started. Wrist frames carded. Pull up double parking. Don't even pay like I'm the owner. My young niggas retarded.
Yo, what up, guys? We're on the clock. It's Caleb back again with Julian. And we also have a plethora of other faces on the Zoom call screen, as you guys are all seeing. We'll give we just did a little around the horn to each other of some introductions, and I think the best way to do it is that we'll give everybody kind of their moment to make their introductions when they're making their first pick. That way we can kind of get right into things. If you guys couldn't tell by the title, we are doing a 2024 NBA mock draft. It's about middle way of the NBA season. We just got over the All-Star break this past weekend, which was definitely an interesting one. And I'm sure I'd love to hear everybody chime in some of the thoughts about the All-Star break. First round mock, we ran a lottery a couple of weeks ago, so these aren't like necessarily based off the most recent NBA standings. I just wanted to give everybody a good amount of time to prep. So we've all had time to kind of make our decisions about maybe what direction we want to take draft-wise with our teams. And then we've also had the opportunity to make some trades. So we had a handful of trades go through pre-draft, all the trades that took place between our GMs. First, we had a kind of a blockbuster deal between the Jazz and the Knicks, with Julian and Steve trading the 17th and 28th pick back and forth with each other, as well as swapping John Collins and Julius Randle. Quite an interesting pick. And then we also had kind of a non-consequential trade to this draft, so we'll spend a little bit of time on it because I made a trade with Logan, who's the Trailblazers, and I was the Spurs. I got rid of Keldon Johnson, who maybe doesn't fit our timeline, in trade for Malcolm Brogdon, come in and be a veteran guard presence. No picks swapped here. And this trade could play a little into what I do with my first Spurs pick. And then we had another major move made here by Danny Ainge, aka Julian Mendelson, swapping a whole bunch of picks, exchange for Lauri Markkanen, heading to the Pelicans. Steve again, both of them making a lot of deals. Everybody had teams obviously assigned that were within the lottery. And Metcalf decided to go out of the box and offer a trade to the league, I suppose, who are operating as the GM of the Brooklyn Nets. And we allowed a trade to go through that involved the 13th overall pick, which was owned by Oklahoma City in exchange for Mikal Bridges. So the details of that trade are not necessarily important for this podcast. But so that's kind of the background. Is everybody kind of ready to rock and roll? Cam is officially on the clock with the first pick. When you're ready to make your pick, Cam, you can make an introduction. In the meantime, while we're starting this first little clock for the first pick, does anybody have any thoughts about the All-Star weekend that they would like to talk about? Any immediate things that popped out to them from the festivities? Any highlights?
I don't have a fix, but something needs to change. I don't have a detailed answer for the fix, but something needs to be fixed.
I'd agree. This game wasn't that competitive. Obviously, 200 points, first time that's been broken in All-Star history. Not really the best calling card for an All-Star weekend, I'd say. And then I think, the dunk contest was really cool with McCullar getting his second dunk, but I think a lot of people were underwhelmed with kind of Jaylen Brown's performance. I think he could have gone a little bit more all out, but I think that's up for debate.
Yeah, I wouldn't say dunking over Kai Cenat is the most impressive thing in the world. Maybe if like Kai Cenat was on stilts or like on a unicycle or something, that would have been pretty sick. But he's I think probably a majority of us are taller than Kai Cenat, right? Anyone under 5 foot? No one? Yeah, I didn't think so, guys.
It it was definitely tough. I did like seeing Damian Lillard get the MVP though. He balled out a little bit. The shooting definitely in the game was pretty lights out. And speaking of the shooting, what do we think about the results of the Sabrina and Steph? That was the other thing that I also wanted to bring up. And do we think that we would see something like that take place in the future to continue to give exposure to the WNBA? What are kind of some people's thoughts on that?
They said Caitlin Clark could play in the NBA.
Be interesting to see. She can definitely shoot it. I'd like to see. I think a lot of people's gripes would probably be the ball size, for maybe her shooting it. But I think she could shoot in any basket, any ball size. Doesn't really matter. She'd probably get buckets. The first pick is in. Everybody. The GM of the Detroit Pistons, who had the first overall pick, is in to make his selection. Cam, take it away.
Yeah. All right. Detroit Pistons, we decided to go with Alex Sarr from France.
What led you to take Alex Sarr with the first overall pick for Detroit?
One, my actual job isn't on the line. Probably would never go big with number one pick ever again. It seems like history shows that you always get burnt when you go big nowadays. But I think he has some real versatility where he can play that. If a guy can play that, that 4, kind of be next to another brawler, another bruiser down there, I think he can, get back some top 3 value. I think in this draft, you're not going to get, the best player at number 1. I think the best player at the draft will probably come around 3, 4, just because it's very, I would say gray at the top. Around, the top 3. I don't know if there's anyone that even deserves a top 2 pick. A lot of these guys are just number 1 picks by default. So I decided to go Sarr, 7'1", versatile. He's still learning how to get his own shot, but the flashes are there. He can already play finish, can already roll, has all the nuances when it comes to, short roll passes and when to roll, when not to roll. You can pop, form looks great. I think it's an easy pick for a mock draft,
Fair enough. Where do you see his fit long term positionally? Do you think he's more of a forward, or do you think he's going to be playing the 5 in the NBA, or do you see him kind of being a positionless player like we're seeing teams like the Spurs use Wemby and Chet on the perimeter, kind of using them in a positionless fashion? Do you see him kind of developing into that type of player, or being a guy who's at the dunker spot primarily?
Oh no, he definitely has more than the dunker spot to him. Like you said, I think he's at positionless kind of 4, as far as how he matches up with that Pistons squad. I think him and Duren's gonna be, he's gonna have his growing pains because they're both not just reliable 3-point shooters, to be honest. But I think Sarr is pretty close to getting there, around 30% plus, where you have to respect it. I think they can run a little dual big system. I think you've seen plenty of teams make it work. And as far as the Sarr and him thing, that's going to get a little weird because Sarr isn't the greatest shooter right now. I wouldn't even say he's a reliable shooter either right now. So it could get a little weird with their young core going forward. But you really have to go Sarr right here because a wing would just mean you're about to just move on from a Sarr pretty much. In a sense, so I think going Sarr, I think he has some plug and play ability.
Fair enough. Yeah, I like it. It's a good pick. It makes it interesting for me here at 2. I could kind of do really whatever I want to, but with the trade I made to get Malcolm Brogdon, I'm actually pretty confident in the player that I am going to take, and I'm not really going to take much time here. Who I hold very highly. In my personal regard, and I'm going to take Cody Williams from Colorado with the 2nd overall pick to the San Antonio Spurs. I like, adding Malcolm Brogdon helps. I think this team, depth-wise at the guard, obviously this year a big gripe with San Antonio's offense is the lack of ability to get the ball into Wemby for consistent touches. And then, when he's off the floor, there's a lack of, pop and a real scoring punch to that offense at times. And I think, going forward is building around, obviously we moved away from Keldon Johnson, who, is a great wing piece. But, at 24, it doesn't really fit our timeline in terms of trying to contend with Wemby being our centerpiece. And now we have, the second overall pick. So I saw it as a good opportunity, get a veteran in there at the guard spot, turn Wemby into the best player that he can be during his first couple of years, continue to develop, and bringing him along as the guy who could potentially be, the next, best player in the NBA for, a decade. He's definitely made that argument easier and easier with the way he's played early on. And adding a guy like Cody Williams, who also has tremendous upside to that roster. It's hard to go wrong. I thought about, going guard, and I'm sure we'll see that, a lot of people are going to talk a lot about this guard class here within the next couple hours. And I'm curious to see where maybe the guy that I was thinking about taking, who I probably would have taken at this spot preseason. But because I've been so impressed with Cody Williams and the things he's been able to do as a freshman, and somebody who's, a young guy still. His draft age, he is going to be 19, I believe, on draft day. So, doing great things. 47% from three is like the one number that's just been astounding to me with him as a prospect. And I think he's a can't miss guy. So with that, I will send it to the third overall pick. My co-host at On the Clock, Julian Mendelson.
Man, I'm actually torn because going into this draft, I was thinking like the Raptors need a power wing pair with Scotty Barnes. The problem is that they also need a point guard and they also need a center because they have neither of those things right now. And I don't really think Jakob Poeltl's going to cut it. But wings win in this league. So with the third pick in the 2024 NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors are going to take Zaccharie Risacher. I have no idea if I'm butchering that name or not. I apologize to him. He's 6'8". He moves like he's 6'5". He is really, really good off the dribble. He can shoot the ball, just really gifted with the ball in his hands. And I think pairing him next to a wing like Scotty Barnes is just exciting. Like, you have two guys who are almost in this weird, like 2-3-4 flow state. And Scotty's even sometimes capable of bringing the ball up. Zaccharie can stretch the floor a little bit better than Scotty Barnes can, which is something the Raptors are going to need. And I just think a nice little 1-2-3-4 of quickly kind of at the 1, Barrett at the 2, Scotty at the whatever position he wants to play, and Risacher right next to him. I kind of like it. And I kind of want to start bringing some versatility to Toronto Raptors team that is, in a word, atrocious, which is pretty sad to say. What is it? 5 or 6 years after winning a championship. So hopefully, Toronto, you've got your guy. If not, maybe next year. Yeah, whoever is at 4, which it looks like is Tyler. Tyler on the clock.
All right, I was really hoping Risacher was going to fall there. Great pick. I think he's the best player in this draft. All right, so for Charlotte, one of those wings, whether it's Zaccharie or Cody, would have been delightful. Even Alex Sarr playing him next to Mark Williams would have been fun. I still get some red flags with this guy, but I think he still has the most upside right now. I'm going Stephon Castle from UConn. By the game, I think he looks better and better. I love how he's played off ball. He's shown more stuff on ball. Really good passer, really good cutter, incredible in transition. But the defense has really, really stood out this year. And I was really concerned about the defense coming into the season. And he's been one of the best perimeter defenders, not only on UConn, but I think in the country, especially among freshmen. So if/when the shot comes along, which I pretty optimistic that it will to at least some extent. I think the mechanics look good. He's starting to get a little more confident in it, especially recently. So when you can kind of plug and play him next to guys like Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball, where they're taking on the bulk of the kind of offensive responsibilities, and he's just filling in around the gaps there, pairing his defense with Mark Williams. I think it just provides a lot of versatility and upside to a Charlotte team that has some really, really intriguing young talent.
Mike, I have a quick question. Obviously, there's a couple of other guards on the board that are like in this range.
Mm-hmm.
What is your preference with Castle over a guy like, let's say, like Topic or Dillingham or Reed Sheppard?
I think Castle's size and defense really sets him apart from Sheppard and Dillingham. Dillingham, both of those guys are obviously much better shooters. Dillingham's a little flashier playmaker. But I think Castle's passing and playmaking, it kind of falls pretty close to those guys. He's just played so much off ball this year. Topic, I'm a little lower on. And I think he's going to have the ball to succeed. The defense is non-existent. I don't really buy the shot. Heck of a playmaker. But I think putting him next to LaMelo, I don't think you can play those guys together. So that combined with I think Castle has way, way, way more defensive upside and kind of proven tape at this point than all three of those guys.
Fair enough. I like it. I think it's an interesting pick. I definitely at the moment am still coming around on him, but I think it's hard to argue with the stretch of basketball he's especially had lately. With some of the flashes with the shot, I definitely like it and can get behind it. And I think in a draft that really doesn't have a lot of picks that really look like absolute home run swings, he looks like a guy that can be a home run swing with whatever type of role he's able to carve out as a guard in a league that definitely loves the big guards right now. So I think it's a good archetype to bet on. So I like the pick. I think it's a good swing to make here early. Especially pairing him next to LaMelo. I think that's an awesome backcourt pairing, which I love. Steve with Washington, you're on the clock.
Well, I have the Wizards, and I am counting my lucky stars. My prayers worked. I'm taking Nikola Topic at the number 5 overall pick for the Wizards. I had Ignacio Risotto of No Ceilings recently on my podcast, and he did talk about, it depends on who gets the number 1 pick, where these guys are going to go. And he specifically said for the Wizards, they absolutely need somebody that, isn't selfish with the ball, doesn't just like shooting it up, and will create for other people, which Topic absolutely will. Number 1, like Tyler just mentioned, he does need the ball in his hands. I think the Wizards are probably the most starved team for like somebody that could at least get to a number 1 option. Not saying Topic will, but he does profile as those things. A lot of people have compared him to Goran Dragic, which you can see with the ability to pressure the rim and get downhill a lot. Maybe not the most like explosive athlete, but he's just able to get in the paint all the time. I kind of compare him more to a 6'6" Dennis Schroeder, because I do believe that Topic will eventually shoot because his free throw numbers are really good. They're always in the 80s or in the high 80s. But I think it'll take time, like a Schroeder, where the Schroeder we know now took about 4 years to finally get there. And even now, he's not like jacking up threes like Steph Curry. He's still like in the 30% three-point attempt rate there. Again, pressures the rim, still gets to the line, but 6'6" Dennis Schroeder to me isn't intriguing. And if Topic does turn out to be like a Goran Dragic type, then yeah, absolutely. I'm happy with the way this draft has turned out for DC.
I love the Topic pick. He was probably the guy going into the year that if you had to ask me who's my number 1 pick bet that I would like to make, who I think would be the most fun outcome for this class, and definitely would have been Topic. I think for a couple weeks he kind of lit the world on fire with some of his tape early, obviously at a level of competition that maybe necessarily isn't fit for his skill set. And I think a lot of people are definitely waiting to make their final stance on him until we see him healthy for a stretch here going forward. And with that, we move to Portland with Logan Adams with the 6th overall pick. You are now on the clock.
really, there's only one guy on the board for me right now, and that's Ron Holland II. For Portland, we've done a good job bringing in young guard talent, whether that's Shaden Sharp, Scoot Henderson, Anthony Simons. Loaded the big man rotation up with guys like Aiden and Robert Williams. In this mock, I traded for Keldon Johnson to kind of shore up their wing rotation, which does kind of create an interesting fit between Holland and Johnson in that sense, because it's either the biggest wing pairing you can find or the smallest forward pairing you can find. But I think Holland is the second player on my board at this point in time. I think he's just a talent swing that you have to take at this point.
So, quick question for you, Logan, because you mentioned Scoot Henderson. Would you have any reservations that the Portland Trail Blazers are a bit reliant at this point on guys that didn't go through the NCAA? If you look at them, you've got Shaden Sharp already, you've got Anthony Simons already, Scoot Henderson, and you're adding another guy. Do you think that, like, did that have any sway on your decision at all? Or, like, now that you're looking back at it, do you think, like, maybe there's kind of a trend here that is kind of likely for Portland in general?
It's an interesting coincidence, is what I'd call it. I don't think it had any sway in my decision. I think Ron is just the best player on the board by far. He's the only tier 1 player on my board remaining, and I think he fits pretty well and pretty seamlessly on this team in terms of talent. We're going to play fast. We're going to be athletic. We're going to get up and down the court. He fits that kind of theme and roster building really well.
I want to make a note here with the first 6 picks so far, all of which under 20 years old at draft day, and from, you know, kind of my community ranking board, all of the 18-year-olds, at least consensusly in the top 10 or top, 7-ish of most people boards have all been taken. Just an interesting little note age-wise I thought was interesting. A lot of younger guys in this class flying off the board early, and I'll be curious to see when we transition to some more upperclassmen talent, possibly in college. Just an interesting thing to watch. And with that, we have Trevor, who's kind of, the turn picks here at 7 and 8 in our mock draft. I don't know if he's going to fire him off right away or if he's going to give us a second. Let's find out, Trevor. What's up?
No, I definitely want to give, because I'm thinking harder about number 8 with Houston in this scenario. Memphis, I had to think less about, because I think Memphis is in a predicament where, and I'm just going to go ahead and talk for a second to explain a little bit of why the pick is what it is. It doesn't necessarily reflect exactly where this guy is on my board. My best available player left on my board, who is 4th, is still on the board. So obviously I have choices for my next pick as well. But Memphis is in a predicament where this is the last year of Desmond Bane's contract not being in the 30 million range, right? His contract's going to kick in for next year. So I think Memphis this year, obviously people are going to look at as an utter failure, of course, with missing Morant and then obviously with some injuries. This was just one of those years where you just step back, right? We know that they were the 2 seed last year, so we know what they're capable of when they're fully healthy. So I think that they can get winning value where they don't have to go get an 18-year-old. They don't have to go get a 19-year-old, although those picks might be very valuable for them. I think they're in a position where they could, every year you have to assume that you're going to go all in when you have a player like Morant, if he can stay on the floor and stay out of trouble. So with that being said, this might surprise some folks, but I just think the kind of winning impact this guy makes, I think they need. I know Marcus Smart is an incredible defender at 6'3", but I think they need a toolsy wing, like an OG Anunoby almost, in a sense, somebody that they can jump in and say, hey, ready to play 35 minutes in the playoffs in a couple of years, or ready to play 20 now and get into that mode. I'm taking Kevin McCullar from Kansas because he's an incredible toolsy wing defender. Everything I just laid out before, the things that stand out for me, if you're playing off of Morant and Desmond Bane, right? You need to have a guy that can be confident with the ball in different space, right? He's north of 70% in points per possession ranking and cutting, spot up, and transition. So he's north of 70%. He's actually north of 74% on all 3 of those statistics. So he plays really well in space and transition. Obviously in spot up, we know what he can be as a 35% 3-point shooter this year. He's really improved. And it's somebody that, I felt the way I felt about Ochai Agbaji for a reason. I don't think he went to a situation where he was able to contribute to a winning program right away. But like I still think he was going to be able to play 20 minutes for a playoff team within 2 years. I really do, and I don't think that that's coming to fruition. So Kevin McCullar is the pick. I know he's a little older. I know it's kind of like someone said earlier. This draft is just there's not really an eyes open surefire pick honestly after the first 2 or 3. So I think this is a guy that can help Memphis win, turn right around after a bad season, and go get back into the top 4 in the West like they were 2 years. I guess by the time we talk about it 2 years ago.
I love the pick. I know Julian was kind of waiting for me to chime in. But Kevin McCullar is one of my guys. I think I'm gonna probably have him pretty highly rated, maybe even to the top 10. So I love it. I think if you're the Grizzlies and you have that high of a pick, come actual draft night, and you have the opportunity to go get a guy who's win now. I think maybe you left somebody on the board who could have been, a great pick, and we'll see how quickly he goes off the board as we go forward. There's some other guys that are a bit older with Knecht, and some other guys in this class that maybe are win now type of players. But what do you think is the ultimate upside with Kevin McCullar on the Grizzlies? Where do you see his role probably shaking out as time goes on? Because I mean, with top 10 picks generally, you got to have a plan for this guy, and he's going to be a key part of your future. And what as the Grizzlies GM, what's your plan for Kevin McCullar over the next 4 to 8 years?
I think I already laid it out, honestly. Like, I think he immediately is going to be somebody that they can rely on, right? They're going to say, hey, this is somebody that he may not be guarding the best player in a playoff series, right? Because I don't think there's many guys that could really do that. Let's be real for a second, right? Nobody's really guarding Giannis. Nobody's really guarding Jokic. It's just, how can you neutralize him, right? So he's a really strong, versatile wing in that regard. And I think that's I think he's going to be that consistently for the next I think you said 2, 4, 8 years, right? I think he'll be somebody that plays and it's just pro ready, right? We've seen Kansas players have experience. I know he's played in college now 5 years, but he's a prepared player. He's somebody that has learned a lot, has championship DNA from winning a championship at Kansas. And I think that's really important for him.
I dig it. I think that was an awesome pick. Not something I was expecting going in to see Kevin McCullar go top 10, but I'm here for it. Now you're up again with number 8 with Houston, and I'm obviously hoping for another great pick from Trevor Everette.
So here's my problem. Ever since we got the invite for this 3 weeks ago, I was immediately like, oh my God, I have Houston. That was probably the worst draw in the top 10 for me. And it's nothing, I'm not slight. I want my Houston Rockets fans to be like, I wanted to be clear. I'm not slighting them in any way. There's enough guys on the roster right now that I love that I'm like, I don't know who just is a plug and play, fill in immediately, like, or is it somebody you take insurance on, whatever? I don't know. I genuinely, up until this moment, I'm still figuring it out. So I think for the sake of, if this was, I think Kam mentioned earlier, like, my job's on the line, I'm not taking a big whatever, right? If I'm actually the Detroit Pistons GM. If I'm actually the GM of the Rockets, I'm taking guys that I believe in. I'm taking guys that my scouting department believes in. In this case, we are both those guys. So I'm going to take my best player left on the board. Honestly, I'm just going to tell you it's Jalen Green insurance, and I'll leave it at that. This guy plays with an absolute ridiculous mentality. I can tell by some of your reactions to it probably is. I love his scoring ability. I'm kind of setting him up a little bit here. I think he's a dog. I think the mentality he doesn't back down from anything. I have defensive questions, but we did about Jalen Green as well. I think there's a switch flip there in this guy's brain, and it's Jacoby Walter. I think he's going to bring it. I think he's going to match Ime Udoka in every sense and just be part of that environment. I think Scott Drew was the perfect coach for him in college. Again, the guy left on my board, I'm not going to let somebody like that slip, right? I feel like I'm living out the Minnesota Vikings whenever Justin Jefferson fell, right? I'm like over here, like, yes, they took the other guy, let's do it, right? And I'm rolling with what I like. And I think like I said, his scoring ability and his ability to get into guys at the rim and create pressure is just unreal. For a freshman, it's like he's a 30-year-old out there, like, with extreme confidence, and I just love it. And I think he'll fit right in with Ime Udoka.
Great pick. I like the idea of adding, with all the success they've had this season, adding another, not necessarily a crazy upside talent piece, but I think a guy that, some people definitely have maybe a different idea about his upside, I should say, than I do. But I think that he's somebody that can definitely come in and provide the things you're talking about, and add some versatility, further versatility to that backcourt. for Houston. I like it. Great pick. We got Julian up with Atlanta. What are we thinking here,
Yeah,
Julian? You got your pick all ready to go?
I think I do. There's a part of me that wants to trade it because it's the Hawks, and I just need to dump so much salary off of this team. They're paying. When I did the research for it, they're paying a combined $80 million a year for, I think it's 2 or 3 years at the minimum, to DeAndre Hunter, Trae Young, and Clint Capella. Trae Young is available. If anybody wants Trae Young, I know he's an all-star. He's an all-star, guys. Guys, I have an all-star up for trade. No, come on. Trae Young,
You're
all-star.
wild.
I'll give it a second to marinate while I kind of like pretend like I'm going through the motions on this pick, because I'm just saying this out loud. I am open to trading it. If anyone wants a certain player at number 9 and you're interested, if not, I will take this guy at 9, and people are welcome to come at me later and throw some trades for him. Honestly, with the Hawks, as long as I'm not taking a guard, it's probably a good decision here, just because they're kind of a bit of a logjam in that backcourt. I don't totally buy into this guy. I know 100%. I don't totally 100% buy into this guy yet. I know there's a couple of other people on this draft who do, but I'm going to take Matas Buzelis from the G League Ignite. I think at 9, that's kind of where I have him on my board. And I think with the emergence of Jalen Johnson, he's a fun wing to put alongside him. I still don't think the Hawks are going to be that good this year. Maybe I'll be able to get something else that I want at 21. Maybe if someone wants to trade me something for Trae Young or Matas Buzelis, my phone line is wide open right now. But look, Matas just does all the wingy things. Personally, I think he moves a little bit slow sometimes, but he's a really good help defender. He can get down the lane pretty effectively. His jumper looks good. I know percentage-wise, he's not quite where like you'd expect him to be given the way that his jumper looks, but I do think like there is a better player inside of him. Caleb always tells me he's going to be like Franz Wagner. I'm not quite sure I believe that. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm hesitant about this pick, but I'm going to pass along to the next person on the board, which is Logan at 10 with Portland. Yeah.
Logan's on the clock with 10 with Portland, but I do want to add some notes here about Buzelis. And I mean, I think I heard Tyler talking about it on No Ceilings, talking kind of about his shooting ability and how it's something that, going into the year, we thought that this was going to be the calling card of him as a prospect. And I think sometimes, we tend to overthink when we get presented with a different sample size and outcome than we're expecting. But with Buzelis, I think the things that I've taken away most is, this kid is an exceptional, mover for somebody at 6'10". I think, his agility, although maybe isn't as impressive, I think some people are hoping, and the player that, I think a lot of people want him to be, maybe isn't what Matas is going to be at the NBA level, but I think he's going to be more than capable to attack closeouts. And I think at 6'10", he presents a really fun option to add alongside a guy like Jalen Johnson, who also, is an exceptionally big wing who has some positional flexibility at the 3-4. And I don't know. I love that pick, Julian. I don't think that they should look to trade it at all. I think if the Hawks, somehow stumble into Matas Buzelis, they should take it and run.
Yeah,
I don't know. Does anybody
about
have any disagreements or quarrels? I'm opening it up to the floor. About Julian's proposition to try and trade a guy like Matas Buzelis. What's our group opinion of this fit with Atlanta for Matas? Any takers?
Don't do it.
I like the fit. I mean, I'm a little lower and skeptical on Buzelis, but I think the fit makes sense. If you're not asking him to do any on-ball creation, I think has a ton of upside as like a standstill shooter. I've been impressed with the weak side rim protection, the defensive fundamentals with the footwork and stuff is solid. He's just kind of a mediocre athlete. So he has to tighten up the handle. But if you're using him as just kind of like a 3-and-D stretch forward kind of guy, I can see the vision.
To Caleb's point, does Franz Wagner really do all the, like, Franz Wagner doesn't do some of those things right now, and he's a guy, by the way, I'm being completely upfront. I've told Julian and Caleb this off record, like, biggest miss of my lifetime with Franz Wagner. Like, it's out there, people can find it, but Franz doesn't do some of those things effectively, but I completely agree otherwise.
I just think the savviness is definitely there, and that's where I kind of grabbed the Franz Wagner comp. Is it's very much a feel and savvy type of thing, not necessarily game for game comp, but I still love the pick. Logan, we got any updates here at 10?
I'm still at kind of a crossroads here. We're at Portland. We kind of have a lot in the point guard category, a lot in the center category. We're bolstering our small forward and power forward. So that really leaves only one position left on the board. Yet there aren't a lot of ideal options here. At shooting guard, you could argue Rob Dillingham as a guy who fits in as kind of a combo guard, but at 6'1", maybe even shorter. I don't love the fit there. There are a couple guys who I'm thinking maybe I can grab down the board. And I think that leaves me with one guy who I'm not high up on to take top 10 if it was just a board-based draft. But I'm going to go with Reed Sheppard.
Hey, Logan, I will float you a trade offer right now. Do you want to trade down? Do you want to trade down? I have 3 picks with Utah. Do you want 14 and 17 for 10?
I'll do it.
Deal.
Wow.
For the content, baby. For the
Reed
content.
The Reed Sheppard pick is withdrawn? Or Julian,
Depends
are
on
you
what.
taking Reed Sheppard at 10?
I don't know
Julian
that
wants to take Reed Sheppard.
I don't know that I'm taking Reed Sheppard at 10. I just wanted to try. I told Steve when I made this trade that I wanted to be able to. No, I know who I'm taking already. But I told Steve when I made the trade to get rid of Lauri Markkanen that I wanted to use 2 of those picks to trade up, and I saw an opportunity because Logan seems like he's not feeling it. There's not guys in the range that you want. There's no fits. I might as well do for you.
14 and 17, correct?
He's totally cool to retract it too, by the way. But yeah, 10 for 14 and 17.
All right, cool. Reed Sheppard's been retracted, just so everyone is aware. Julian's now on the clock with Utah at 10, but I believe the pick is in.
The pick is Tyler Smith. The pick has to be Tyler Smith. Wow. Utah is dying for more of these power wings. We just traded Lauri Markkanen. I think Tyler Smith is the perfect replacement for him. He's not quite as dynamic of an on-ball creator as Lauri is, but as a weak side rim protector, as a 3-point shooter, as a cutter, I could not be happier. The Jazz are trying to retool still, right? They've got all these picks from Gobert and Mitchell. Why not? Oh, we also have Julius Randle. I totally forgot about that. Why trade Lauri? Because I wanted more picks. Youth. Build through the youth, Trevor. You got to build through the youth. It's a young man's game nowadays. Also, Lauri was just a throw-in. Why not get a ton of value for him now? And we cashed in, baby.
I just want to be clear that to everyone listening, that Danny Ainge would never do any of this crap. I just want to be clear. Danny Ainge would not, none of it, literally none of it. I just want that to be clear. Come on, going with youth and you trade Lauri. Okay, yeah, I'm good.
And Julian's actions are his own and do not represent the thoughts of the rest of us.
I'm not Danny Ainge.
Amen.
I'm not Danny Ainge. But look, in all seriousness, I do think that trading Lauri wasn't ideal, but I did think that after after trading for Julius Randle to move up 11 spots somehow, I still don't know how that happened. I went for it. Just my world.
I'll come rushing to Julian's defense here. I can't defend any of the trades that he's made. Any of them. What I can defend here is the selection of Tyler Smith in the top 10 that I will vouch for. And at the end of the day, I think when, remove, all the context aside, when you take a player who's 6'10", has, incredible positional versatility, something, I've said, a couple of times, and we've seen really throughout this draft, we're talking about guys and where they can mix and match with these different lineups, with these different fits on different teams. And I think Tyler Smith, kind of sums up all of that really in one player. Somebody who can shoot 40% from three, defend multiple positions. I think there's some things to be desired there with, athleticism and pertaining to lateral quickness and some of his shot blocking on defense. And then, I think some people are maybe placing limitations on what they see from him on ball. But I'm somebody who's probably not in that category. I'd really, really vouch for his upside as somebody who can be a scoring option. And I love the pick, Julian. Full disclosure, that was my pick at 12, and I was sitting there grinning to myself before when Reed Sheppard was picked, because I knew that Tyler wasn't going to take Tyler Smith. But maybe he would have. Maybe he would have with 11 with Oklahoma City. It would have been a good fit as well. Only credit to Tyler Smith that he would fit so well on so many teams. I was going to take him for Chicago as well.
Can I have one last little chance to explain my many actions?
Absolutely.
The trio of Walker Kessler, Tyler Smith, and Keontae George will feed millions, and I'm so here for it. That's it. That's my only defense.
I got nothing left to say to you, Julian. Tyler, you are up in this draft that has quickly gone quite haywire.
I like Tyler Smith. He was definitely one of the names I was considering at 11 for OKC. I have a lottery grade on him, so I think the pick is defensible by all means. All right, with OKC, so as we mentioned at the top of the show, traded for Mikal Bridges, and sent out Lou Dort and Josh Giddey. So just kind of going for depth here. If you thought the Tyler Smith pick was a little off the rails here, I am all in on this guy. 6'9" shooter, elite rebounder, elite athlete. I'm going Johnny Furphy from Kansas.
I love it. What is kind of the fit that you see with him at Oklahoma City, like immediately? Because I think I would be one to argue that yes, it's a great fit there, but is he somebody that we think can contribute day one? I mean, we've seen him contribute quite a good bit on this Kansas roster, obviously, but NBA is a whole different game, and is he somebody that you think can adjust quickly?
For just kind of looking at his freshman year, I think we've seen him adjust really quickly from getting spot minutes, limited role, into being one of the most important pieces of that starting lineup and providing much needed rebounding and floor spacing to a team that didn't have it until they kind of inserted him into the starting lineup. I don't think he's going to be ready to contribute day one, because I don't think really any rookie in this class is really going to be able to contribute day one. So this is more of kind of a long-term view. Additionally, I just brought in Mikal Bridges. So there's my small forward who's contributing day one. So for Johnny to kind of be able to continue to develop physically, he'll probably bounce back and forth between the Blue and the Thunder for a good amount, like they do with a lot of their rookies, and just get a lot of minutes, understand the culture, and really learn from everyone while continuing to develop physically. I just think he adds that kind of dribble, pass, shoot, rebound, defend, positional size that OKC really looks for. He's more of an off-ball guy. The dribble and on-ball creation stuff isn't really there with him yet. I don't think it ever really needs to be, because just his off-ball movement, also elite rebounder for his position, and I buy the defense a lot more than some people seem to.
Is this Poku and Usman Jang insurance?
Poku, I don't think is going to be on the team next year. Usman Jang was always probably a multi-year project. It wouldn't surprise me if Furphy contributes before Jang does. But
really?
he's
okay.
I think Zhang has showed some good stuff in flashes, but it's just more length and more shooting, and athleticism, which is a whole bunch of stuff that the Thunder continue to like.
I like the pick. I was going to ask a follow-up question, but Trevor asked a great one. I'm going to move on with my next pick, and I'm a little torn here because, as everybody knows, I was very, very active in trying to get rid of Zach LaVine and Vucevic. I think I offered them to almost everybody in here that had, at least multiple picks in this draft, trying to get maybe another pick in here with Chicago. And I think, if looking at it, DeMar DeRozan's future is uncertain. Obviously, I'm shopping Vucevic and LaVine. But I think if, we're sticking with this group and we're don't have any trades on the horizon, Caruso obviously stuck around past the real trade deadline, which boggles my mind that he wasn't able to get traded for at least a first-round pick or two at the deadline to a contender. And I think what this team really needs to add is similar to what Trevor did with Memphis, is trying to get a win-now player who can come in and make a difference in a multitude of ways. And I don't really have to shift things around to fit them. And it's somebody that, I'm not necessarily the highest on. But I think that has had a phenomenal season, has really been one of the better stories in the entire country. I'm taking Dalton Knecht to go to the Chicago Bulls at 12. Somebody who's going to come in, knock down shots day one. And I think will just be a really good piece to add to this Bulls roster, especially if, this situation, leaving the trade deadline is very similar to what I'm leaving our mock draft here now is just, kind of, I got my metaphorical in my hands and I'm just kind of standing there. I didn't really get any deals done. So I have to take what I can get. And I think the best, basketball player available at this juncture is probably going to be Dalton Knecht from Tennessee. Think it might be a bit of a reach, and I probably could have traded back, but nobody was going to trade with the Bulls anyway. So we're going to take our pick and be happy with it.
You think you get a little pushback for the older kind of two guard kind of scorer role right there?
I think that depends on what role you're trying to necessarily fit him into. I think at the college level, he definitely fit into more of a score first type of role, but he demonstrated the ability to, obviously impact the game on the glass. Has had a tremendous season, rebounding the ball at 6'6", something that impresses me. I think also his playmaking is underrated. Really can do anything he needs to out of really any set. And I think that providing that type of options when you just kind of need a bucket, the second unit, even though he's 22, I would argue that in any draft class, when you're drafting a guy at 22, if you believe that he's going to be better than a guy that you draft at 19 in 3 years, I'd rather take the guy that can help my team win now, especially with the Bulls, when I got 3 guys that are former All-Stars, all way overpaid, assuming that we try and keep Pat Williams and DeMar DeRozan somehow and keep this roster intact, praying that Lonzo Ball can somehow come back and play, at least 20 minutes a game for us. Getting a guy like Knecht to add to the wing, I think it's a good pick. If I was going maybe long-term in the future, I probably would have gone for a guy like Klingan and tried to hang our hat on, a front court player like Filipowski maybe even. But I like the pick with Dalton. I think he's going to provide some things day one that they need, which is shooting and grit, IQ. I can't wait to see him and Caruso in this hypothetical come off the bench and backcourt minutes. I think that'll be a lot of fun to watch. So that's kind of my take on it. Kobe White in there too. That's a fun veteran squad right there with White, Caruso, and Knecht. It's quite some dogs out there.
I think his defensive ability fits really well next to White. I'm glad you threw that into the end there.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely he'll work out as a draft pick as long as I think 12th is definitely a little rich even for my blood, but I saw the guy there. And like I said, if we're the Bulls and we're leaving, the pre-draft trade season with really nothing to show for, you have to just take the guy who's going to help impact your current state of your roster. And I just think that he's it. Next pick, we got Steve up with the Nets. What are we thinking, Steve, with Brooklyn? After they just dished
So
off
I
Mikal
just want to make
Bridges.
it clear. I want to make it clear. I did not make the Mikal Bridges pick. I, as the new GM, do not like what the old GM did. That's a pick territory I would not have done. Number one.
Were
I
you
think
the only one who voted against it too?
I did. Yes, I do. I was the one that didn't
That's
sit down because
terrible.
I was like,
That's
no
terrible.
way would I do that. And so I just want to make that clear. My predecessor did it, not myself. So don't blame me, Brooklyn fans. So I am considering 3 different guys who I think have anomalous production that are still on the board with Reed Sheppard, Tidjane Salaün, and Ryan Dunn. But ultimately, I'm a defense guy. I'm going to go with Ryan Dunn. I think we really haven't seen a defender like this in a very long time. I also think Ryan Dunn can work very well at power forward or small ball center. He's listed at 6'8", 216 by University of Virginia. I think he can bulk up to like 220. And then you're cooking with gas. I understand the offense is kind of funky, but I don't want to put him at small forward like a lot of draft sites are still putting him there, because then you're really putting a lot of pressure on his shot, which may never come around. He's shooting like 22% from 3. He's shooting like 53% from the free throw line. I'm not going to make that bet. What I am going to make the bet on, though, is 1.5 steals, 2.4 blocks. You just don't see the level of ability from any defender like this. He's the tallest player other than Blake Buchanan on Virginia's roster. He mainly plays center for that Virginia team. So at that size, doing that production, being like their starting center, it means a lot. Also, everybody in that starting lineup is like 185 pounds or smaller. Like Reese Beekman's like 180, McNeely's like 179, and then Groves and the other Brody are like 185. So he's had to make up a lot for size.
Shout out
and
to Andrew
for height.
Rohde. Shout
Yeah,
out to Andrew
Rhodey.
Rohde. That's my guy.
Yeah. So I just can't get over how good he is on defense. I understand the offense is what it is, but for a team that has Cam Thomas, and now that's kind of the main building block, I'm probably not going to resign Nick Claxton now, and we're going like just loading up on shooting and whatever. But I really want to buy into Ryan Dunn because I just don't think you've seen this level of defender before, and I really want to know what that can turn into at the next level.
I'm glad you mentioned Cam Thomas. I want to throw this out there because I'm sure everybody would probably agree with it. But like, there are moments. I was talking to Julian last night. There are moments when Ryan Dunn, like, he'll have like 10 feet of separation. He just won't even look at the rim. And it's like Cam Thomas obviously does not have that problem. So I think that's a perfect
pair.
It's
the perfect pair.
It's literally exactly. I think it allows him to be good at what he's allowed to be good at early on, right? It allows him to really mold into that defensive specialist. I think people compared it to not Tabo Cephalosha, but the other Andre Robertson. I couldn't get the name out. Just let him be there and be good defensively, and stuff, if it's going to figure itself out, will. So I think that was a really good point about Thomas.
So I do have a quick question though, because after Trevor mentioned the whole not even looking at the rim thing, as a Philly fan, that made me think of another player on the Brooklyn Nets. Are you going to be able to successfully run an offense with 2 guys that don't look at the rim? One being Ben Simmons, the other being Ryan Dunn.
I mean, I'm doing everything I can to get Simmons out of here, even if it means stretching and waiving him. That's what I personally would do. One last year on his contract, I read that report recently that like the Nets tried to build their offense around him, which I think is stupid. We've seen enough of Ben Simmons. No, thank you. Ryan Dunn's here. We're not giving him the ball to try and make him a point guard like Ben Simmons, forcing the ball in his hands. This is a guy that's going to work on screening and rolling. He does shoot over 70% at the rim in college right now. Let's build on those things first.
I like it. That puts Logan on the clock. And I mean,
Love
we
the
did
pick,
talk
Steve,
about it
by the
early.
way. Love it. Good pick.
Yeah, good pick, Steve. I'm sure at this point, those of you who have been listening so far probably know who Logan's going to pick. I'm sure Logan knows who Logan's going to pick. I'll give it to Logan.
Yeah, like you said, I think everybody knows where this is going. Had the opportunity to take him at 10, almost did. Backed out last second, was able to get him at 14. I'm going Reed Sheppard. No, I Was a little more hesitant taking him at 10. He is a smaller guard at 6'2", 6'3". Profiles more as a combo guard than a shooting guard or than a point guard. But I like his fit next to guys like Simons, Scoot and Sharp in that guard core. He fills a lot of gaps. He's a knockdown shooter off the spot. He can make all the pick and roll reads, and he's a hound on defense, man. And that's kind of what we need in that guard core. I really like how we've been able to rebuild our defense and athleticism to this roster.
Are you about to move off Simons?
I'm
open to it. I'm open to it. It would have to be a good deal because I actually really like Simons moving forward and currently. Still super young, great shot creator, great pick and roll creator. So if I was to move on from Simons, it would have to be a pretty good offer.
Yeah, I think he's definitely still an underrated player. Simons is somehow, even with the transition away from Dame as a franchise. I think he still hasn't even gotten the recognition that he really deserves. But I like, adding Holland and Sheppard to this team, this core that you have. Obviously with Scoot and still hanging on to Ayton. I think that you've built a good little group. I definitely think that you have a lot to work with here with the 17th and 24th pick. I'm envying the draft that Logan is putting together, trades included. So another great pick. Love it. Was able to get the guy that he wanted, even trading down 4 picks. Next, we got Kam on the other turn with back-to-back picks. First up with Miami.
Yeah, for Miami, I'm running to the podium. The 15th pick, Miami Heat decided to go with Tidjane Salaün from France. I really think him next to Bam is gonna piss some people off in the East. I think Salaün has that kind of blend of rim protection and outside scoring and athleticism, as well as they say he's pushing 6'11". So him next to Bam, it could get spooky out there. I know they still have Jovic, but I don't think Spo's very fond of Jovic. And Jovic is young, so he can be a little trade piece in the future. But I think in that front court, they never really had scary size whatsoever. And now you're adding a young guy like Salaün that can score it when he's at his best, and he can already stretch it and defend the rim and be that long defender already right now as a 19-year-old.
I dig it. I dig the fit too. I think Miami is a good place for him to go to really untap what I think a lot of people could view as like some game breaking defensive potential that I think is definitely there, but needs to get worked on. Good pick. I like it. Another French guy in this what seems to be stacked international class. We haven't seen a ton of them fly off the board yet, besides the first couple picks, but we'll see if that trend continues because we got some guys here coming up that could be taken off the board pretty quickly. Maybe Kam will take another international guy here with 16 with the Orlando Magic. We have to see.
For the 16th pick, the Orlando Magic decided to go with Hansen Yang from China. I think about to shoot up boards real soon once they realize, he can pass right now, can finish right now, and he's 7'1" at 19 years old. Out there in China, his mobility, extremely impressive for that size. And, he'll have his doubters just because he's coming from overseas, but, I believe in the skill set. And being out there in Orlando, I think you either go 5 or you just try to stockpile on perimeter talent with shooting. I mean, the Magic have young players at all positions. So I think probably the sweetest position right now is that 5 spot right now. Because they still have to run a lot of Paulo and Isaac at that 5. So now you got a hub that you can play for about 22 to 25 minutes, early in his career. And he can give you real, interior defense and, playmaking at that big spot you didn't have for these past couple of years.
Believe it or not, this is a pick that I was possibly expecting. Was possibly seeing someone, buy in on the plus size Chinese big man who has some enticing talents like Kam talked about. So Although it may have come as a shock to many, maybe some of us on this call ourselves are pretty shocked, but I think that you'll have some people out there that'll definitely agree with you that he has a ton of upside, is a super interesting prospect, and definitely a name to watch going forward if you're definitely just catching up on this class and haven't dove into some of the international talents. He's definitely a guy worth a watch. Really, really interesting talent. So now we have Logan up here with seems like his 1,000,000th pick with Portland. Do you have your 17th selection ready to go, Logan?
I wish I could say I had a concrete opinion on who I want to take. Because I'm running out of roster spots, and a lot of the guys at the top of my board are at positions that I really don't feel comfortable adding to this roster. I'm open to a trade if anybody wants to fire anything at me real quick. I know I'm kind of loading up the trade total with Portland at this point in time, but
check your Twitter DMs. That's the only way I can communicate with you right now, Mr. GM.
There is one guy that's on the board that is falling. That I mean, I think that if we were operating as if this is a real broadcast, me and Julian would have to mention that Robert Dillingham is still on the board. And I think for a lot of viewers, this has been an aching process hearing these names fly off. We had the other Kentucky guard already drafted by Logan at 14, and maybe could pair him up. I know it obviously doesn't fit well at all, but just throwing stuff out there because Dillingham falling this far is definitely a shock to me. But some interesting fits there if you go big as well, because there is a lot of big guys still left in this draft.
I think I'm just going to
we have some trade talks going on.
The Portland Trailblazers select tentatively Donovan Clingan.
Oh, love it. Love it. Big Don, as I like to call him.
Aiden or Robert Williams, whoever needs them, up for trade.
I was thinking about Williams when we were talking about our trade offers earlier between the Bulls. I was thinking about throwing him in there, but you were so adamantly against anything to do with Zach LaVine, which this has got to be the story of this draft, that no one wants Zach LaVine anymore.
Nope.
Yeah, there's a timeline I'm trying to follow here. Add young players. Get Zach LaVine ideally does fit the athletic, running the floor kind of offense, defense to offense situation that I want to run, but couldn't justify the contract, couldn't justify the age.
100%. I think it's not surprising to me. I'm just a fill-in GM here, interim completely. Julian, you got back-to-back picks with Toronto and Utah. I'm sure you're aware, and pondering while your clock begins to tick.
Dude, I mean, I can't believe that Dillingham is still on the board. And one of the things that I put down for Toronto, pretty much in all caps, because their only guard on the roster, point guard-ish, as of when I looked, was Emmanuel Quickley. So I am not even going to think twice about it. I'm going to snap up Robert Dillingham. I don't love the fit alongside Quickley, but if you have Quickley come off the bench, right, or Dillingham come off the bench, you alternate the two, whatever. You always have a microwave scorer. You pair one along RJ Barrett, and now you have that backcourt alongside two ridiculous wings and Risacher and Scotty Barnes, and we're starting to get cooked with a little gas here. Toronto might be a little fun if that's the lineup they're rolling out. At least with Quickley and Dillingham, they're going to be a lot of fun to watch because those guys are just microwave scorers who can. Dillingham's a great. I do want to say, in talking about Rob Dillingham, I think people thought going into college that he was just going to kind of be like this fun scorer, who can get a bucket, kind of playground ball, because that's kind of what it looked like at OTE. His playmaking is very underrated. Like, I think the first 5 or 6 games of the season, like he was pretty much turnoverless. And I just want to highlight, like, if you put Rob Dillingham at the 1, he is a legitimate point guard. And I think that that's been understated, especially going into the season. But people are starting to realize it now. So now I'm back with the Jazz.
Great pick, by the way.
have-
I would add, just kind of viewing here, give you a second to make your reaffirm your selection, Julian. For some people, they'd be like, you really could have taken Dillingham at 3 with Toronto. I think some people might have even argued for that. So, leaving the draft with a guy at 18, and Robert Dillingham seems a little familiar to me, to somebody by the name of Cam Whitmore last year, who, highly touted recruit, had a, pretty decent season. I think a lot of people would argue Robert Dillingham's having a different class of year than Cam Whitmore did, but falling a little bit in our mock draft similar to Whitmore as Dillingham was more my point. What is our people's opinions of Dillingham's upside?
I love the value there. And his scoring and playmaking has been absurd this season. And I don't buy the 6'3" measurement for a second. And if he even came in over 6'1", I would be pretty surprised. So is he going to be able to defend anyone? No. But is it really going to matter, especially with the length and the pieces and the physicality and the size that Toronto's kind of putting around him there? Or, he's kind of being that he'll be playing with in Toronto. I don't think it'll matter. He still plays pretty hard on defense. The defensive playmaking stuff, the numbers, the steal rate, they're all pretty impressive. So he gambles a lot jumping passing lanes, but he converts on a lot of them. If that's as much as you're getting from him on defense for his whole career, if that sustains, I think that's more than enough to kind of compensate for that lack of size, for those lack of fundamentals, because he does at least play hard on that end. He's just not going to be a good defender, but you're not taking him for defense anyways. You're taking him for the electric scoring, the electric playmaking, and all of that has been super impressive this year.
I mean, if you're Toronto and leaving with Risacher and Dillingham, you're pretty happy with the draft, I think, 100%. A lot of people, I think, are giving that A pluses, plus. So, Julian, Utah, what's the word out there in Salt Lake?
I hate it, but I think I'm going to do something. This is probably a bad pick.
Well, it is not, out of the realm of anything you've done with Utah so far. So
here's what I'm thinking. Because I've been out on this guy since the start of the freaking season. I went back in, I watched more tape, and I think that Isaiah Collier alongside Keontae George is a fun fit, and I'm going to take him. I think there's enough talent in there. I don't love this pick. This is me second, third, fourth, fifth guessing this pick. I do think that pairing him alongside Keontae George is probably pretty good for him because of Keontae's off-ball ability. I think you have one guard that can really get downhill. Both of them can make pretty well. For Tyler Smith or for Walker Kessler, I like them in pick and roll for that.
And Julius Randle.
And Julius, I keep forgetting that I traded for Julius Randle. The spacing is probably going to be bad for a year, and I accept it, and I'm fully willing to admit it. But I think if Collier develops a jump shot, which I've seen worse. It's not great, but I've seen worse. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take him.
I like it. I'll be the first to chime in. I think as somebody who's been scouting right alongside you, at least from the on the clock opinion, I think I can speak for is that we haven't been the highest people on Kaye. I think some of the turnover questions, kind of outweigh in our eyes sometimes his playmaking prowess, but it's hard to argue against, the 6'4" bull in a China shop guard that he's really built to be. And I think if his defensive potential is really unlocked, could be a really fun guard in the NBA. depending on fit. And I think Utah's a good fit for him. If you guys look like you're, rebuilding but trading for Julius Randle, I think there's a good guard for you guys. I'm up with Phoenix. And I'm going to run to the podium myself, and I'm going to select DaRon Holmes from Dayton with the 20th pick. And I can't say that there's probably a better pick or as a Suns fan that I would like to see Phoenix make with this pick if they're able to get it. There's some of us were able to get our rooting teams, as we'll see. Logan will make a pick for his favorite team later. But I was happy enough to get the Suns through this lottery generation. And as I was kind of scouting and looking ahead, I really was thinking about, what is kind of the direction here I go with this team that's obviously, very, very much so built to win now with, my favorite player in the league, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, Eric Gordon is a piece that we'll have to work on retaining. And then obviously we swapped out DeAndre Ayton for Jusuf Nurkic. And I think in my eyes, Nurkic isn't necessarily the center of our future by any means. I don't think that we'll be able to get by with somebody who isn't a plus rim protector with the 3 stars that we have. And I think if you can go out and get within a draft pick, somebody who, in my opinion, really should have already been drafted and shouldn't be on the board right now for me, and DaRon Holmes, who can shoot the 3 off the catch as a plus to all the athleticism and intangibles that he brings on the defensive end. I think this is a home run for the Suns if I was drafting for them. And I think that some of you may agree. What are the thoughts on the DaRon Holmes, the second pick, the big man out of Dayton?
I've been cooking up a trade like in the back end, and I figured you were probably going to take him, and I didn't know if he was going to be available. Oh man, I mean, that's the best player left on my board, bar none. And I just think I don't understand how this guy's not an NBA player. He's an incredible, versatile big as a defensive anchor. He's somebody that I got a chance to see up close, sitting on the sideline this year against Houston, and he held his own against one of the most physical teams in the country, if not the most physical team in the country. No, not from the front court specifically, but the ability to handle the ball has absolutely improved year over year, which is incredible for somebody that, when you're going to have NBA defenders attacking you of all sizes. I mean, you're going to have to be able to hold your own in that regard. The post touch has gotten better. The ability to stretch it out. I'm in love with DaRon Holmes, and I mean, to be clear, I have him in the lottery, and I'm floored he fell this far.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that the handle is something that, when you look at modern offenses, being able to operate in a DHO and deny the handoff and being able to attack the rim out of it is a huge asset to add to your offense. So I think a lot of the Suns players will love playing with a guy like DaRon Holmes. Somebody's just going to go get it every play. Julian, I know you loved that pick. So what you got firing back to you in Atlanta?
Yeah, I'm a little salty because I've been a DaRon Holmes believer for 2 years, and it would have been so nice to be able to get him at 21 for my lovely Atlanta Hawks team that are so well run. I'm so happy. I'll be honest, I really would. The Hawks are tough, right? Because they're a team that should be in win now mode.
Go get another 6'11" stretch player. He's right there in front of you.
I'm going to get a 7'2" stretch player because I can.
Do it.
You know what? I'm going to take Zvonimir Ivisic. I think it would be so wild. He's played 5 games, so I'm not going to sit here and tell you that like after 5 games, this kid is like going to set the world on fire. But he has these like flashes where you're like, if I can see him do it on an NBA floor, I wouldn't be surprised. And if it works out, it is like an all-time steal. Or alternatively, it like will not work out at all and it'll blow up in my face and he'll be out of the league in 2 years. But I'm willing to live with the consequences because he's big, he shoots, he passes, he dribbles, he protects the rim. Like, I know I'm just saying like basic things that players do, but like he literally is 7'2" and is capable and has shown flashes of doing pretty much anything. It's not every day you see a 7'2" guy throw a behind the back pass to the corner. It's not every day. I know that a lot of this is coming from one game because it was his one great game. It's not every day you see a 7'2" guy drill 4 threes in a row, 3 of them contested. Like, I really do think there's something there, and Atlanta's kind of desperate right now because they have no idea what direction they're going. So I think they need to take a swing. With that, Tyler, you're on the clock with my Sixers.
I mean, I'm not gonna let that just go right past us, dude. I mean,
what do you mean?
I love the pick. Like, I mean, I love it. I love it. I love it. I think that he's a play. I think you hit all the notes. Somebody who, you know, potentially projects to be one of these guys that, you know, teams, you know, regret not drafting, you know, almost instantly after they see how they kind of play against them and, you know, see, wow, he is really tall and he really can shoot it. And, oh, wow, he's actually kind of a little bit more agile than you think for 7'2". But again, it's another one of these guys that's just such a huge swing. You know, because it was your last pick, I love it. I think that if maybe you had different picks later and we were doing a second round, you'd maybe reevaluate his value. I think he's a home run second round pick for a team that wants to be ambitious this year. And I think that he was in a similar spot last year. Definitely has raised his stock in terms of notoriety of just being on campus at Kentucky. And now with a couple good performances, I think that he's become even more of a recognizable name in scouting circles. And I think that that's as much as you can ask for from him at this point with the limited sample size. And, you know, 21, sure, we'll take it, Julian. Any other notes? Any other notes?
Before we continue, I do have an announcement to make. There has been a trade that has gone through. Denver and Cleveland. The Cavs receive Justin Holiday, the 26th pick, a 2024 second from Minnesota, and a 2025 Denver second. In return, the Nuggets receive Tristan Thompson. Is he still in the league? Is that legal?
Expiring $2 million deal.
There's no way. Okay. Well, Tristan Thompson, the 23rd pick in the draft, and a 2025 Milwaukee second round pick. Yeah, the pick is in. With the 22nd pick in the NBA draft, the Philadelphia Sixers select Tristan da Silva out of the University of Colorado.
I love that. Love that.
I knew he was going to do it. I knew if there was going to be somebody that didn't pick a player that I wouldn't grab the logo of, it was going to be Tyler. He was going to do that to me. Of course.
I'll speak for him really quick because I've listened to the pods enough. I haven't talked to him about it, but I will just say, like, quickly on Da Silva, every time I watched Cody Williams film, it felt like Da Silva was making some kind of play off the ball that was super impressive. I have some questions about foot speed and some other things that obviously I think he'll figure out as a big, but he's got some experience playing in college. I think that'll actually play into his hand a little bit. But he's an incredible player. I like some of the shot making ability as well. Just somebody you can rely on it from a pick and pop standpoint. So I know I can't speak for Tyler on Philly's fit for it. I don't hate it, but I'd love to hear Tyler once we get him back with a working router. Mr. Morey, please explain Tristan da Silva.
Tristan da Silva, low maintenance, high IQ, versatile, efficient, just does a little bit of everything. Really smart defender. His overall box score numbers aren't overly impressive, but all the stuff that he does away from the ball, all the stuff that doesn't show up in the box score, just takes a lot of pressure off of, you know, the quote unquote stars and allows them to do their superstar stuff. So he's not going to be a star, but I think he's going to be a really reliable kind of fringe starter for a long time.
I'm not a huge Tristan da Silva believer in terms of first round, but undoubtedly, I think you hit it on the nose. Somebody who's going to come in and be a low maintenance player, come in, impact the game in the right ways. And I think if you're Philly, That's kind of just what you're looking for, especially in the situation like you highlighted. Really just want to add guys that can contribute, especially with the first round pick. I mean, you have a good opportunity to get a good player as well. I like the pick. I'm really, really interested to see why you didn't go Filipowski, but I guess we'll have to wait and see how that conversation goes for the next person who potentially can pick him. Trevor is up.
All right. So for
My
those of you
spreadsheet got
listening, probably
blown.
wondering what the heck just happened with that deal. We basically had to figure out $2 million. And let's be real for a second. Tristan Thompson's a free agent in the offseason, but if I remember correctly, Caleb said something about like the deals. We just assume that Denver has him back. Whatever. The $2 million worked with Justin Holiday. It doesn't really matter. We just had to make the money work. It was really giving him some future draft capital as well in this deal. I'll be honest, Da Silva was one of the two guys that I was between here for Denver. I wanted somebody that was experienced. I think Tyler had a really great case for why he is what he is going to be in the NBA, hopefully. But the guy I want, it's actually not Kyle Filipowski, so I'll go ahead and spoil that. I am going to take another white big that can shoot. So let me just put that out there as well. But I moved up because I think this guy, I'm not sure he would have been picked necessarily. The problem is it kind of is dumb. We're going to pretend like I'm not Milwaukee in the scenario, that I might have picked my own guy in front of me. So I'm just preventing that from happening altogether. Really, I wasn't sure what Logan was going to do, even though I was talking to him. I wasn't sure what Tyler was going to do. I knew Da Silva was probably where he was going. So I'm getting the next best guy who I think from a fit standpoint is incredible for Denver. Pairing him up with his old college teammate, I'm taking PJ Hall. PJ Hall is an incredible big who is a versatile, strong, just really well-rounded bodied player that I think will be able to impact the Denver Nuggets a little quicker than I think people realize. His ability to shoot. I love his mentality. I got to see him at North Carolina a few weeks ago, in-person scouting nugget there. Just, he doesn't back down from anybody. His confidence level is incredible. You can definitely tell he carries himself well. Playing with Jokic will really help his ability to stretch the floor, and we know that he can hit that shot reliably. I obviously felt that strongly last year about Tyson from a will be able to play eventually standpoint. I really liked what I saw from Tyson, but PJ Hall's a better shooter, in my opinion, and a better rebounder as a whole. Tyson, I think, was very versatile from a college standpoint. I think PJ Hall has pro potential, and I do think underrated passer as well, which will help, as everybody on that team is really good passers. So PJ Hall is the pick. I don't know if it necessarily, I feel great about moving up 3 or 4 spots for him, but I didn't want to take the chance in this hypothetical that Tyler may have gone for him, even though I was leaning, I know he was leaning to Silva for a little bit there.
I have one question about PJ Hall. What are we thinking defensively? I think my biggest note on him, like gripe wise, would be foot speed and the lack thereof it, especially laterally. I think positionally he can defy some stuff with some of the things you talk about with just like, his willpower and grit. I think he could make a case to be somebody who could spend some minutes at the small ball 5 with the right matchups. But where do you see him kind of guarding, the plus sized wings and stretch 4s of the NBA today, Trevor? Because I mean, with a guy like Jokic, he's already, you're losing a little bit perimeter defense wise in your front court. So what's kind of your claim?
My thought process is we figure out defensive spots otherwise. I do think he'll fit offensively better. I think that's very clear. I do believe that the foot speed, I see what you're saying, and it's definitely a concern. He obviously has other guys on his team at Clemson right now that are capable defenders from a speed perspective. That really does help him when they get into it, like a zone against Carolina that really helped them in the second half. I look, it's a worry. I'm not going to say it's not, but I think they'll slot him in for. I have the same questions about Filipowski from a foot speed perspective, so it's not something that I just feel the offensive game for Hall was a little bit better. And if you're thinking between those two, I don't necessarily know where they'll put him perfectly. I think that's something they'll have to figure out, or we'll have to figure out as the Nuggets. But I really just I like him as a 4, not somebody you're going to rely on as a rebounder because Jokic takes up so many of those touches. But defensively, I think he'll be able to stay in certain lineups with some slower bigs there, which I know the NBA isn't just a completely all speed. So I think he'll find a fit.
I like it. Logan, you are up with Portland again. Your 1,000,000th and first pick with the Trailblazers. Do you have an idea of where you're going?
I have an idea. I'm not in love with the pick at all. The funny thing about drafting this much is that you start to lose an idea of where you need to go after you fill in spots after spot,
100%.
I think we have our roster spots filled. We have 15 roster spots. I think I'm going to have to take a draft and stash guy at this point if I can't trade out. I'm going to go Ulrich Chomche.
Wow, that was just who I was looking at as like a later pick, but great grab, the youngest player in this draft class. Awesome pick. Talk to us more about Chomche for those who maybe don't know a little bit about the African forward.
I mean, super versatile, super young. You mentioned youngest player in this draft. Incredible tools. You kind of look at him from afar just because he hasn't really gotten too much chance to shine on his team, just how things work in non-NBA or non-American developmental leagues, you know, or not necessarily developmental leagues, but you know what I mean. But super versatile, super long, super athletic. Somebody who has the tools but hasn't yet put it all together. I think he's a great candidate to just kind of stay another year, try and build on what he's shown and flashes on the film right now.
Yeah, I agree. And is this definitely, obviously you've made a couple picks here, and this is probably as influencer decision as kind of being a stash guy going forward for Portland?
It does, yeah, because I don't feel like there's many directions we could have gone with this putt, given what we've been able to do and just having very little chances to trade out, seemingly. But I like the idea of having him and keeping him for a year overseas, letting him develop away from the team and then coming in a new player.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what his end result is as a prospect in this class, or if he's a guy that goes into next year with a full head of steam. But obviously with how we're valuing him, it's unlikely that NBA GMs are far from our opinions on him, because he's definitely a guy that I was, full disclosure, was going to take with the 30th pick to cap off this draft. So I like the pick. And we are on our way to Trevor with Milwaukee at 25 for my hometown, Wisconsin, Milwaukee Bucks.
All right. So I think there are some fits that were very similar to, obviously I have Denver and had Denver, I guess, before, and then have Milwaukee. I think two teams that are competing. I feel very similarly about, I think a stretch big like a PJ Hall would have worked, but I think the fit with Denver was worth skipping past myself here, if that makes sense. I'm just going to buy into a guy, even if some of the stats and the analytics don't back me up on this guy. I just believe he's a winner. And I think that the fact that the Bucks are figuring out, or the fact that we as the Bucks are figuring out some long-term depth, knowing that we're putting and committing, north of $50 million to Giannis and Damian Lillard, with the cap only going up. I think it went up a little less than we anticipated as a league. I think that we can figure out some spots at the big, Lopez is under contract for another year. Bobby Portis is as well. 2 more years there. Pat Connaughton's still really good. I think we need to figure out a guard and a playmaker that we can really rely on, and somebody that I just know comes from a winning program that we've seen consistent growth from in college. He rebounds the ball really well, passes the ball really well, is an incredible leader, can get to the rim at a high efficiency. Again, I know the stats, I'm almost questioning myself a little bit in this pick, but I really, really like what he provides for right now and for in the future for Milwaukee. And I'm taking UConn national champion guard Tristan Newton.
Wow. I'm stunned.
I was not expecting that.
That's another one.
I really like what he provides, like I said, from a lot of just, again, the leadership intangibles, the winning ability, the ability to play next to Giannis and comfortably fit. I know the shooting is obviously a question, and that's a really big thing that if you're playing next to Giannis, I don't buy the shooting right this moment for him, but I think his ability to move off the ball, I know he has been really good as a passer at UConn, and it's something that, you need some insurance as a guy that can take the ball up long term, and I really do like Tristan Newton. I think he provides winning plays.
I love it. He's a player that, another one of these guys that, similar to Ivisic, that I had on my radar last year, that I love the way he plays the game. I think him and Castle are definitely, in my opinion, the most fun backcourt to watch in the entire country. Obviously, their ranking kind of speaks for itself as, being clearly one of the most talented backcourts in the country. And I think, when you're looking for a guard in the modern NBA, I've said it time and time again, Tristan Newton is not far from it. So I like the pick. Definitely was not expecting to hear his name tonight. But I definitely don't mind it. It's a welcome sight to see Tristan Newton in this mock. So great pick.
I just want
Trevor.
to ask real quick because there are a couple of guards that I was thinking, what's the case for him over a guy like Kolek or a guy like Proctor or a guy like McCain? Those were the three names, at least for me, in that range that kind of popped into my head. Played for winning programs, really good playmakers, and more reliable shot. Like, what's the argument for Newton over guys like that?
It's a good question. Look, Kolek, I know that he is a dog of a player, but I think the size in the NBA and a little bit of the speed, I have some questions about. I think Newton's frame is actually going to give him a lot more of an advantage than I think people realize. 6'5", 200. I think he can grow into that frame a little bit better. I buy into the defensive ability. Obviously, Kolek is an incredible player, and I think there's things we could sit here and pick apart between the two. I don't remember who you said is the other one. Kolek was the one that caught my attention in that question, but regardless, I think Newton's at least comparative to Kolek. I believe in the size and, like I said, the leadership ability of a national champion type of team like that. That speaks volumes to me. What he learned under Coach Hurley, I think he's shown a lot of really valuable things from a winning mentality standpoint. Who was the other guy, by the way? I want to make sure I heard the question right.
Proctor and McCain. The Duke guys.
McCain was the other guy. If I went completely opposite direction, I was like, you know what? If they just need somebody, it doesn't hurt to have a bucket guard. But then it's like the same thing with Damian Lillard. He wouldn't play for a few more years. I don't know if there was enough win now value. Like I said, I've had a lot of teams that can win now, right? Memphis, I've had Denver, Milwaukee, right? Minus I think Houston was my other team. But no offense to Houston, but look, I want guys that I feel like can contribute on the defensive end right now for the Bucks, because that has been a big question mark since Doc Rivers took over. And I think that that's a guy that can fill that role. Comparative to McCain and Proctor, I think is just still, young guard learning from mistakes. And I think he could use another year at college, actually, believe it or not.
What's going to be kind of your feud into the arguments about age? Obviously, Newton is going to be one of the older guys in this class. And especially, I think he's April, so he might be the oldest player that we've had drafted so far. I'm not sure how much older he may be than Knecht or McCullar, but what is kind of your argument there for the Bucks? Is it just still, a win now decision, or kind of where do you see Newton going as a player in the long term? Because with the first round pick, again, kind of like I made the argument for Ivisic, but in a different light. With a guy like this, you could probably have gotten him at a second round value. If you had other picks in the draft that you knew you were going to be able to take. Would you kind of agree with that sentiment? And maybe if there's one of those guards that Julian mentioned that you would pick instead, maybe a more upside pick, who would it be? Otherwise you can just, stick to your guns with Newton and, kind of hammer home your points about that.
Oh, yeah, I stick to it regardless. So talking about the age thing, he's 22, will be 23 on April 26th. Another couple of guys to think about. Kolek will be 23 on March 27th. Is somebody that will probably get picked in this range, potentially. I know that's somebody I would ask about. McCain obviously would be the polar opposite. That was the only other player I really considered. From an age standpoint, Dalton Knecht will be 23 on March 15th come draft time. So, I know that's a completely different player, right? The age thing, I think age now for especially a team like Milwaukee, I don't look at it like the same way. It's like, okay, yeah, long-term pick, whatever. I think it gets overblown a little bit. Sure, I think McCain would have been great for them at what is he like 18 right now, right? No, Jerry McCain 20. Sorry, he's a little older than I thought. But regardless, I'd like Tristan Newton again for all the reasons I already laid out, and it's somebody that I think can be good for you later. I think playing behind Damian Lillard and playing, he won't have to be forced to do too much, right? Tristan Newton will be able to contribute and do what he is good at, which is play defense, pass the ball efficiently, and be able to stay on the floor and attack the rim. And I think that's something he'll continue to be able to do and not be forced to do anything outside of what he's comfortable and capable of.
Love it.
Interesting that they already have Andre Jackson on that team. Just throwing that out there.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Didn't even think about that, but that's, yeah. There you go. Even further cements that that's a good idea.
All right, we got Logan again at 26, but this time with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Hometown favorite team, from my understanding,
Yeah.
Logan.
Yeah, I'm an Ohio born and raised. Cleveland Cavaliers have been a long time my favorite team. Picking here, I'm gonna go with somebody who the last podcast I appeared on was a draft set goes for no ceilings with Maxwell Bamba. I'm gonna go with somebody who I had a lot of kind words to say about on there, and somebody who I actually have ranked in my lottery. I'm gonna go with Adama Bal.
Great pick.
Great pick.
Another Frenchman.
Another Santa
Cleveland
Clara
Santa.
product too, by the way. I'm just gonna make
Yeah.
that clear. I mean, they are just a wagon lately when it comes to draft prospects.
I mean, Cleveland, we've got the wing rotation is getting filled out slowly but surely. You've got creators, defenders, shooters. Really nobody who has proven that they can do all three of those things. And I think Adama Bal has kind of the chance to grow into that role with Cleveland long term. Born in 2003, so he's not going to be too old come draft time. And just has really, really blossomed with Santa Clara as a guy who can take you off the dribble, lightning quick first step, developed his handle, great getting into his shot from all three levels, and has grown tremendously as a playmaker. And I'm really excited to see where it goes moving forward, whether with Cleveland or another team in real life.
I love it. I think that's a home run pick for Cleveland. A guy who I am in the firm belief will be in consensus first round conversations around draft time. Tyler, we got you making your last pick with Oklahoma City, your last pick of the draft. Let's hear it.
And this was honestly a guy that I was thinking about at 11, even though I'm not quite that high on him.
Can I interject here and offer you a trade as the Knicks?
You can offer, yeah. I'm always willing to listen.
I'll give you Mitchell Robinson and 28 for this pick.
I'm looking up his cap right now really quick, just for what it's worth.
It's about 14 million.
But
I don't think you can shoot that down.
when does it expire though? Hold on.
I
Why?
think he's for 2 or 3 seasons.
I don't know, Tyler. I don't know if you're looking at it, but I'll just say it. 15.6 this year, 14.3, 12.9, and then expires or unrestricted in 2026. Just for what it's worth.
All right. I don't know what salary I have to match that.
Yeah, I mean, I would take whatever anyway.
Oh,
Like you don't have a war chest to deal with there.
I was kind of excited about this pick, so I'm unfortunate. It's a heck of an offer. So, but I'm gonna have to say no.
What if I threw in like another second round pick?
I have 8 million of those.
What if I threw in something like Jericho Sims or Deuce McBride?
Yeah, those guys just aren't going to do anything on this team. So yeah,
A lot of blue.
I appreciate the offer. It's a heck of an offer, and you know what? I might be dumb for saying no to it. But I'm just gonna go with Kyle Filipowski. I'm not quite as high on him as some who have him surefire lottery, but his physicality I think is really underrated. I do think he'll shoot it eventually, and the rebounding for the past 2 years has been incredible. So I know there are some defensive concerns. The passing this year has also been absolutely absurd. So I think he's one of the better one of the best passing centers in this class. So that ability to pass and shoot fits in exactly what they like to do on both ends of the floor. And I think there can be some fun kind of lineup stuff that you can play him and Chet together at times. So
I love it. I think he provides exactly what Oklahoma City is looking for in size, versatility, and potential shooting prowess, which I mean, not much better that you can get, especially at a national player of the year type caliber player as well. That kind of prowess of being somebody who is a gold medalist, be it in 3-on-3, but has quite the pedigree as a good basketball player regardless. So I like the pick. Steve, you're up with New York. Obviously, you were just trying to shop this pick and Mitchell Robinson. So maybe your feelings have now quickly shifted with what you're going to do with the Knicks.
Well, thank you, Sam Presti, for turning this down, because I'm picking Yves Missi from Baylor, which I was looking at the board and I'm like, he hasn't gone off the board yet. This seems like a match made in heaven with Tom Thibodeau. Like, this is the Tibbs kind of guy. 7 foot, can protect the rim, going to be pick and roll big. Like, it's the match made in heaven here. And I will be shopping Mitch Robb, honestly, because I feel like he can't stay healthy. That's the big thing. And with this team going forward, they're going to need somebody. They're at the center position. They're going to need a healthy body all the time. So whoever has 29 and 30, if you want to take Mitchell Robinson for 29 and 30, I am more than happy to make that deal. But I cannot believe Yves Missi fell all the way to 28, because Tibbs is going to love that.
Yep, I agree. I think he will definitely love what Missi can bring to the table. Logan, you have your final pick now at 29 with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Unless you want Mitch Robb.
Unless you want Mitchell Robinson, of course.
Can't say I'm too excited about the idea of having Mitchell Robinson to the center room that already features Karl-Anthony Towns, Rudy Gobert, and Naz Reid. Just seems a little redundant. I've had this pick penciled in since around pick 20. This is how much I love this guy and how much I wanted him to fall just to this pick. I'm going to go with Kylan Boswell out of Arizona.
Awesome pick. Another one of these versatile guards that can provide a lot of different things to a lot of different lineups. And what is kind of your thought here with Minnesota sticking with kind of the win now mentality, and where does Boswell kind of fit into those plans?
It's a win now mentality, but it's something that I don't think really hurts a roster that is so complete to take a guard who has already shown that he can impact winning in many different roles, but also happens to be one of the younger players in the draft. He's still a 2005 born player. Boswell obviously brings great defense, versatile shooting. He's actually, I think, one of the more underrated passers in this class. Can really sling the ball off his hand with so much zip and accuracy. He's smaller, but he really can hit an angle like no other player can in this class. I think he just fits so well into a point guard group, growing and developing underneath Mike Conley and Monte Morris if they decide to bring him back. But yeah, he might not be tasked with too many minutes early on, but at the end of the first round, getting an 18-year-old that you can bring in and expect minutes from going forward is something that I don't think you can pass up on.
I got questions about Newton, so I want to ask you this because it was a glaring weakness of Boswell that I think Mike Conley's not getting any younger, right, Mr. Metcalf? And I know you're a big Tim Wars fan, but his pick and roll ball handler ability, I have a ton of questions about, right? And he's only going to get, he's going to grow into that. He's young, like you said, but Mike Conley's not getting any younger, right? And obviously, is he the long-term solution there as the pick and roll ball handler? Because you have a lot of bigs that you're going to have for a long time with those contracts, and someone's going to have to get them the ball in space. And I just don't know if it's going to be Boswell consistently.
It's been a mixed batch, honestly, going through the film. He showed a lot earlier on, but I feel like it's kind of been a little inconsistent as of late. But I like his ability to kind of probe with the ball, to kind of hang with it in the air and survey, and kind of just take some time to see the floor as a smaller player, which is I feel like you can get sped up a lot as smaller guards can get sped up a little easier than they can, than bigger guards can. Boswell really, I don't see it happening too often. Occasionally you will get the possession where he runs into a crappy turnover. But I like the flashes. I like what the good stuff is really good. The bad stuff is stuff that I think he will iron out. But like you said, Mike Conley's not getting any younger. So you take the youngest guy on the board and hope that you can help get him right.
I did have something else to ask about Kylan. So I am here in Tucson. The team that I see the most is the University of Arizona. It's the team I scout like pretty much every single day. Kylan can't shoot inside the 2-point arc. He is incredibly inefficient there. He struggles with size. He struggles with any kind of craft to finish, either in the mid-range, in the paint, or at the rim. How's he going to overcome that?
I think you just kind of have to hope that it comes with physical development a little bit more, using deceleration and craftiness to get into the lane, to work on those floaters, because the floater, I feel like he has a solid feel of when to go up with the floater. It just hasn't gone down. And I feel like that's kind of the next step for him touch wise. It's a fun question to ask is, what can Rudy Gobert do for Kylan Boswell as a creator? because we know the screens, we know what he can do, clearing out of paint with a seal. I think he would benefit a lot from having those big bodies in the paint that are stronger than like kind of in the vein of Amabalo, but a little more refined.
I dig it. I can come around maybe to his overall impact. I definitely don't love 6'2" guards as much. But I definitely think he plays much bigger than he is. And it definitely isn't like a cap on how I view him as a player. I think he's definitely a guy who's going to be a matter of taste for what you're trying to build. And I think, it's a decent pick for Minnesota. Metcalf, as a Timberwolves fan, what is kind of your view on a Boswell fit with Minnesota?
I've had mixed feelings with Boswell. FIBA over the summer, and he just refused to take any shot, whether the guy was on his hip or 15 feet away from him. Then he got off to a hot start, looked awesome. I think the defense has always been really impressive. He is super young for his age. He should be a freshman this year. So you always hope that those guys can continue to kind of grow and develop. I think I just would have leaned more towards like a Jared McCain, a Tyler Kolek, even like a Dylan Jones, Tyrese Proctor at the spot. But I can see the long-term vision with Boswell, especially if that point of attack defense really continues to develop like you hope it will with someone with his defensive pedigree. The outside shot overall has been better this year. So if he can kind of continue to grow that passing, the feel, the inside the arc scoring stuff, and consistently find those lobs to guys like Rudy or those kickouts to Ant and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's unrealistic to expect him to take over that starting role then in a couple of years. So there are a couple different names I would have looked at, but I think Logan's process made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely buy the process of the pick. Like Tyler, maybe I had some different options that maybe would have fit as well with maybe what I thought you were looking for. But to each their own, and especially at this point in the draft, it can be fun to throw some different names out there. And I'm going to throw one of a guy that I think is right up the alley for what Boston is definitely looking to add. I think it was along the same vein of who they took last year as a pick at the wing spot that I really liked in Jordan Walsh. And I'm going to take somebody who maybe not everybody knows is still draft eligible in this draft. And I'm going to take Tafale Leonard Jr. of the G League Texas Legends. The second overall pick in the G League draft last year after declaring from Memphis. A guy that I think provides a little bit of everything at 6'7", but primarily you're going to task him with taking on some hard task defending guys on the perimeter. Versatile defender still, able to switch, kind of 1 through 4. And I think that some of the things that I really like that I've seen is his ability to put the ball on the floor in transition and make some really, really nice skip passes to corners, find open shooters. And I think for Boston, he fits a lot of what they're looking for, player wise, in terms of like bigger wings who can switch and play multiple positions, and then it's not going to be a ball stopper by any means on offense. I think probably spend more time in the G League next year. A little bit on the older side, if I'm not mistaken. I think he'll be 21 on draft day. 21. So you're not necessarily the youngest and most upside pick, but I think a guy that's going to do everything that a coach is looking for in terms of playing hard and setting the tone defensively. I'm curious to see people's thoughts on Tafale Leonard Jr., probably more in relation to what he was able to do last year at Memphis.
I like the pick. I think it is. I need to get back into watching my Tafale Leonard Jr. film, but I do think that the versatility is really, really important for a team like Boston. I think it's going to be a pretty. I mean, he's not really transitioning if he's going from, the Texas Legends in the G League to the Boston Celtics G League team. But I do think it's interesting that he is draft eligible this year, which kind of makes it fun. I was kind of looking at like Kaishan George with that pick personally. Like if I were to throw a couple of alternatives out there and like some honorable mentions, like Kaishan George was one I was thinking about for Boston.
Izano Mansa was also on my mind. Trey Alexander, Alex Caravan, Melvin Ajinka was a guy that I was thinking about. And then like my far out, like I really was pondering, it was Pacom Dadier.
Really? I was convinced you were going to take
pondering.
When you were scrolling down, I saw the guy's name. I was convinced that you were going to take Milan Momcilovic. I was convinced. He's a great player. That was exactly who I thought you were going to take, and I was shocked when you took Stephon Jr. I'm be honest with you. You surprised me, man.
I wanted to keep it different. We definitely tried to go a little bit against like the grain with some of our selections here on the clock, especially when we have the opportunity to highlight other guys that maybe aren't necessarily talked about by everybody, like a guy like Tafali Leonard Jr. Colin Boswell is definitely not like a major name being tossed around on draft podcasts every day. So I'm definitely here for all of the picks that everybody made. I appreciate the time that everybody went into kind of diving into the different scenarios with each of the teams. And really, doing, everything you can with the couple weeks, prep process to get your boards ready in a spot where you're comfortable enough to hang out with us for a couple hours, and make some picks as NBA teams. This is, I think something that all of us would love to do in our everyday lives. So any remarks? I saw Trevor had a finger raised, and I'd be more than happy to hear what you have to say, Trevor.
I was just going to throw out Dylan Jones as another name for
Yep.
Boston at 30. That's another one that I'm taking more time with. I know someone at No Ceilings did a really good piece on him a couple months ago. I need to go reread that. But like I think his two-way ability, I think is really, really capable, and I think he'll continue to grow into that. I think the offensive game is something that'll keep him on an NBA floor longer as the defense continues to get better. Although I do think it's really good.
Yeah, I
wrote about Dylan Jones recently. Super talented guy, super versatile. A couple other names I've seen. I'm surprised they didn't go. Zach Edey and Alex Caravan. Just two guys who are really accomplished at the college level and have been really good this season. Rising up draft boards as well. I'm surprised to see that they didn't go either.
Yeah, Caravan more than Edey, knowing me and Julian's kind of opinions on Edey and where we are as like GMs in terms of if we would draft him or not. Caravan's a guy that is another one of these 6'8" shooters that I think this class has the potential to be stacked with. Is a lot of guys that fit kind of that mold that a lot of teams are looking for, is stick somebody at the 3 or 4 who can knock down shots and defend their position well enough. Then also when you can add on doing all the little things that Caravan does with the rebounding and the playmaking at times, it's tough not to see where he doesn't fit in the first round. But I mean, isn't that kind of the opposite of what everybody's been saying about this class, guys? Come on. Like, we shouldn't be having that hard of a time making, the picks in the first round because this class isn't that good. So I think that, really what this mock draft showed me, to be honest, is, with all the names that were left off of the first round is, this draft does have a lot of potential to churn out some pretty solid prospects and building blocks for these NBA rosters to, venture into. I think there's a lot of different names and faces that we'll still see tossed around. And I think a lot of these guys that maybe we drafted could fall completely off the earth in terms of draft status. Tafali Leonard's a guy that, speaking for myself, is a guy that maybe I wouldn't pick at 30, like I've been kind of hinting at, but, a name that I want to throw out there. He's a guy that I think is supremely talented, but may not even hear his name called. And I think at the end of the day, these are all, a bunch of kids, trying to make their dreams come true. And there's a lot of them in this class that I think that definitely deserve a look. So, we heard a lot of names tonight. I want to let everybody go. It's definitely been a little bit longer than we anticipated, but I appreciate the time. Everybody, did very well, at least with their picks and, kind of getting their opinions out there. So I appreciate the time, gentlemen. Julian, any closing remarks?
It was fun, man. Strictly business. We did a lot of business tonight. That was a good time, guys. Appreciate it.
I'm going to leave everybody's links to everything down in the description. Please be sure to go check out everybody's work. If you're not familiar, we brought on a lot of faces for this one. So a lot more content for everybody to go explore as draft season approaches. Appreciate your time, viewers. Have a good rest of your night, weekend, day, morning, wherever you may be. We're off the clock.